Well, hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Emmett. Today I am going to take a look at a couple of photos from my last photo shoot here on my computer, and I'm going to show you how I matched up the colors between those photos using just some basic color editing techniques. Cameras, I find, are often quite bad at picking out the right color for a photo. Now, I am a Nikon shooter, and Nikon actually has a really good reputation for having very accurate color science. Their colors generally are quite true to life. However, despite that, there are still times when the camera might just pick the wrong color, or when there's just a particular style or mood that we're looking for with the colors in our scenes that are very difficult to achieve in camera. And it's particularly difficult to achieve those in camera as a landscape photographer because you don't have the opportunity to set up kind of colored studio lights and things like that you might otherwise. You really have to work with the lighting that's available to you on the location and the colors that are available to you and so forth. Today though, I am going to show you how you can achieve a particular style or mood in your photos through just very basic color editing tools that are available in pretty much every photo editor. You can even use these on your phone. And through a thorough understanding of those really simple things with no fancy software or presets, you'll be able to either match up the colors between different photos of yours, match up another photographer's style, or just achieve a particular mood that you want to achieve in your photos. So I'm going to swing around to the computer here. We'll take a look at a couple of photos from my last photo shoot, and I'll show you how all of that works. Alright, so here are the two images that we are going to take a look at today. I've put them side by side here so you can see them. The one on the left is one that I really set up the exposure and the color on quite well, and I really like the way that those look. This was really the mood that I was trying to achieve. Now these are the JPEGs straight out of camera. This is before any kind of editing was applied. The one over on the right side though is one that I took where I was trying to throw some leaves out in front of the camera and have them fall down in front of the lens to create a cool effect that way. And with that photo, I had to change the exposure a little bit to match change the shutter speed, which by result changed the exposure, in order to catch the falling leaves as they were coming down, not have them be too blurred or too sharp, either one, right? And as a result, in accomplishing that, we've gotten a little bit darker colors in this photo. The trees at the top that looked kind of golden in the one really look a lot more green in the other. They're barely starting to turn yellow at all. And the bushes down toward the bottom just look a lot darker. Now, if you did watch that video last week, you might recall when I edited them all up that they looked like this. So you can see now both of them I've actually made a little bit more golden, but significantly so in this image on the right here that has those falling leaves. Everything just looks a nice gold color, and to really brighten things up as well, just to match really the style of that image on the left. So really my goal with the one on the left here was pretty much to just keep that style that the JPEG photo had. I didn't really change the colors too much there, but with the one on the right, I really strayed a lot from that JPEG and made a lot of my own changes to it. So let's take a look at how I actually accomplished that. And I just have this open in Affinity Photo, which is what I use for all of my photo editing. But again, you can do these kinds of edits in lots of different photo editors. You're going to find these same tools everywhere. They're going to work the same everywhere you look at them. And the main things that we're going to look at today are real simple. It's just going to be the exposure, the contrast, the saturation and vibrance, the white balance, and kind of shadows highlights, which is essentially just exposure. So mainly we're looking at the brightness of the photo, either in specific areas or overall. the contrast of the photo, which is the difference really in the brightness of that, and the colors in terms of both saturation, so how much of a color there really is, and then the temperature and tint of those colors for the white balance, so whether they're more yellow or blue, whether they're more red or green. So first off, we want to brighten this photo up quite a bit. So we'll just take the exposure slider here and we'll just pull it up. And this is usually a good place to start when you're trying to match up a particular style, is to just try to get the lighting really the same in the two photos. So we're going to bring this up somewhere around there. I think that looks kind of similar to the photo that we were trying to match. And then we're going to take a look at the temperature of the colors here. So we're going to go open up the white balance section, and I was going for a much more golden fall look, and this has a much greener, almost summery look to it. As you know, we're between the two seasons right now. It could go either way. So we'll just take the yellow slider and just pull this image way over toward the yellow. Something like this. So now we've got a much more yellow photo, but we've lost a lot of the green there. It's starting to look kind of yellow as well. So we'll just take the tint and pull it a little bit more green from red. As we do that, it's going to make those greens start to stand out a little bit more. Now we'll come up to the saturation and vibrance. So this is the amount of a particular color. Saturation, when you increase it, is going to increase the amount of color across every color in the image, while vibrance, on the other hand, is going to increase the amount of color just in the more subtle colors in the image. So we're going to actually increase the saturation of this a little bit because we were going for a pretty colorful look. So we're going to pull that up a little like that, and then we're also going to increase the vibrance a little more really than the saturation. I usually go for more vibrance than saturation most of the time, and that brings up those muted colors in the image a little bit. Now, at this point, what I'm mostly noticing is that there's still some areas of this image that I think are quite dark. These bushes here in particular still look real dark to me. So I don't want to make my overall exposure brighter at this point because the area in the sky is already as bright as I want it. So I don't want to be making that any brighter. So I'm going to go and just select the shadow section, and I'll raise the shadows specifically up. And we really don't need to, at least for an easy edit, get into masking off a section. We can just use the shadow slider, pull that up a little bit. I had to stop there for a second because my camera shut off while I was filming. I forgot to make sure that there was enough space available on that memory card before I started. But back to this now. So now I think this image is starting to look really good. I've got the exposures, the colors kind of looking pretty similar to that other image as I recall it. So what I'll do is I'll just check back and forth between the two. And so this is what you're going to want to do if you're trying to get a particular mood from another image, is go and compare to that image, see if you've gotten the right colors there. Now, obviously, if you have more of an idea in your head, then it's more just freehanding it, right? But I'm going to check back to the edited image that I'm trying to match the colors up to, and take a look at that, and then just look back at this one and see where we're at there. So I am noticing that I don't quite like the tone of these greens right here. That's something that I would do with maybe an HSL adjustment. And I'm noticing maybe my overall exposure could be just a bit brighter. However, in the final image that I used for the last video, I actually did opt to go ahead and leave that overall exposure just a little bit lower in that one to kind of match the falling leaves rather than making it quite as bright as that initial one. And I think that's what I am going to do today as well, because these leaves that are falling are a little bit darker, and I think with the tone of the falling leaves, I don't think it needs to be quite as bright. So what I'll do at this point, actually, one more thing I'm noticing. I'm noticing also that there's a bit more contrast in the previous photo than there is in this one. And this is something that you'll want to probably turn up if you've turned some other things up, like your exposure. And don't be afraid when you're editing an image like this to go back and change the sliders several times. So changing your white balance, for example, is going to affect your saturation, and your saturation affects your white balance. So if I make the image more yellow, the yellows in the photo are going to look more saturated. The exposure, if I turn that up, the contrast is going to start to look lower. And so, as you edit the photo, you may go back to a slider and change it a little bit, and that's totally fine to do. So at this point, I'm just going to take up the contrast a little bit. I don't want to go crazy with the contrast, but just kind of gently add a little contrast in there. And I think that kind of gets us a little more of the detail here in the bushes that we had before. I may also, now that I've done that, turn up the shadows and the exposure just a small amount more as well, just to compensate there. And then I think I'll go ahead and hit the develop button. Affinity Photo has this develop persona that's designed for editing raw images, and then after that it kind of saves those changes, and then you can make more edits from there with these live adjustments. At this point, that's where this HSL layer is, and I'm going to add one of those because where I made all those white balance changes to make it a lot more golden, I don't quite like the way that the greens in the bushes look now. They look kind of yellowy to me. And so I'm going to try to change their hue a little bit, and I may have to do a little bit of masking to accomplish that. We will see. And so I'll select the greens in particular in this HSL layer and just try to pull them a little more to the blue side. And yeah, so what I'm noticing when I do that, and when I look at this yellow option as well, is that those greens in the bushes are really starting to show up as yellow at this point, because I pulled that yellow temperature way over. And so what I'll do is I will just use some selective editing with a layer mask to make these greens a bit more green. So I'll make this slider look the way I want those greens to look, which is going to be somewhere around here. I'm not going to be too exacting for the purpose of this video because I've already edited this image. We've seen the final result there. But I'm going to go somewhere around there on it. And then in Affinity Photo, these layers are already masks. And so what I'll do is I will invert the layer so that that's all turned off. And then I'll take a large white brush, a nice soft brush, and just kind of paint that back onto this bush area here, like that. And so you can do something like that if, as you're accomplishing your look, you might get a few areas that you've really started to mess up a little bit in the process there, and you can just do some selective editing to make sure that you're not damaging other areas of the photo as you're improving your overall look. At this point, I'll check back again to our original, and that's looking pretty good. It's looking pretty similar. Now, this is the point in the editing process where more fine edits start to happen. So at this point, you would change things like the sharpness. You would maybe do some detailed editing on this path down here at the bottom, or the trees. There's some little berries to the left you might want to make stand out a little bit more. And this is where really your personal tastes are going to start to come through, and where sort of finer things are going to start to happen. But you can see at this point we have really matched up the colors, right? So if we come back, this was what that photo originally looked like, right? So it was quite dark, it was quite green, a little bit blue even, and that just wasn't the mood that I was looking for. I was looking for this mood over on the left, and at this point, that's really what we've accomplished here. So I'm not going to get into those finer details of regular photo editing today, because this really was about adjusting those colors. And that is really all that there is to that. Achieving a look like that can really seem like something of a mystical process. It can be really hard to know where to even start when you've got a photo where the colors on it are very, very different than what you were going for. It seems like, well, this picture just didn't turn out the way that I wanted it to. But there's actually, particularly from a raw file, a surprising amount that you can do with the colors in a photo to really achieve whatever style and mood you want to achieve with that photograph, which is really, really cool. And there's not really anything complicated that has to happen there. Now, there's more advanced techniques that I didn't get into today. But, you know, as you saw, we made massive changes to a photo using really basic adjustments that are even found on, like, your phone or anything. So definitely you can achieve whatever mood you want if you just take a little bit of time to understand some basic things: the exposure, the saturation and vibrance, the contrast, the white balance, shadows and highlights, things like that. Get a good understanding of those things, and you can really transform your photos in any way that you feel like. So hopefully that helped you guys and inspired you. If you did not see the video from last week where I took these photos, definitely go and have a look at that. And if you did like this video, don't forget to hit the like button on your way out and to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss more things like this. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.